Good morning and welcome to Christ Episcopal Church. We're so happy that you joined us. In this new series, Sermon and a Song, we'll be offering Sunday's sermon plus one piece of music from our wonderful choir and amazingly talented organist, James Fitzwilliam. We hope that this gives you just a taste of what Christ Church has to offer, and we hope that you'll join us in person on Sunday mornings for our worship. May God bless you and thank you for spending a few minutes with Christ Episcopal Church. Episcopalians love the concept of Sabbath. This summer, I've seen friends, colleagues, dioceses around the country posting pictures of their priests and bishops and staff running by the ocean or traveling to see family, going to the Broadway theater, taking time for a walk in a local park, or just holding up an ice cream cone. The idea of Sabbath isn't really just to enjoy a slower pace in the summer, though. It's actually based on a very biblical notion. In fact, the Bible story is the first story in the Bible, in the first book of the Bible. You'll remember from Sunday school the story of creation in 7 days. God creates the mountains and the oceans, night and dark, the waters, the fish, the birds, creepy, crawly things. And of course, at the end of that story, on the 7th day, God looks at all that he has done and rests, enjoys all that's been created. It was one of the practices that distinguished the Hebrew people, the Israelites, from their neighbors in Assyria and Babylon. They were distinctive in part because they practiced the Sabbath. They rested 1 day a week. They let their animals rest 1 day a week too. If you think about that just a little more deeply, you realize how brave and faithful that was. After all, they were trying to raise food and sustain their lives in a pretty hostile climate. They had to collect water in cisterns. They're trying to eke out enough to sustain them. So resting from that work of growing food and collecting water really meant that they trusted in God to keep them safe even while they weren't working. Sabbath is meant to be a discipline that helps us practice giving up control, managing our fear and anxiety, and trusting in God. Today's gospel reading is about Jesus and his disciples on a stormy night on the sea. But on a deeper level, it is also about giving up control, managing fear and anxiety, and trusting in God. Today's gospel happens right after the feeding of the 5,000. The disciples have just participated in one of the most memorable miracles found in the Bible. And Jesus immediately tells the crowds to go home and the disciples to get in the boat. For his own part, Jesus goes up on the mountain to pray. The mountain is Jesus's praying spot, where he sustains himself with his relationship with his Father, with God. Meanwhile, the disciples are in the boat and a horrible storm has come up on the waters. Here in the Northeast, we have certainly seen some powerful and scary storms this summer. We had areas and roads in our area that have been washed away. 2 nights ago, we had another horrible storm in which there was lightning and trees and power lines came down. We've also watched on the news the wildfires in Maui and on roads. We know that natural disasters are terrifying. They make us feel small and powerless. The things that give us a sense of safety and comfort can be taken away in a moment. That's the kind of storm that the disciples found themselves on in the boat. About 3 o'clock in the morning, or the 4th watch of the night, the Gospels tell us, they see a figure walking toward them in the midst of that storm. Carla Works writes in Working Preacher, given the common perception of the sea as the locus of evil and chaos, it is hard to blame them for initially mistaking the figure of Jesus for a specter of death. After all, it is they who have rode into the middle of evil's realm, and the waves are indeed attacking them. Over their cries of fear, Jesus calls to them, "Take heart, it is I, have no fear." A more literal translation of this sentence would be, "Take heart, I am. Do not be afraid." You'll remember, I am is the name that God gives to Moses when he asks to know God's name. At the burning bush, God says to Moses, "I am. Tell them I am sent you." The way we translate I am is Yahweh, the name of God, but a name that implies there is no name for God. This self-revelation is a disclosure of Jesus' source of power. For Matthew's Jewish Christian audience, Jesus' words echo the divine name, I am. Jesus has revealed himself in that moment to be the God of creation, the God of Moses, the God who can control chaos. And the disciples respond, "Truly, you are the Son of God." In Matthew's story, this is meant to reveal who Jesus is. But that revelation is only possible in the midst of the chaos. If Jesus had not forced the disciples to go on this uncertain journey, they would have missed the opportunity to see God revealed in their midst. Sometimes we can see God most clearly when our lives are upended, when we are most afraid, when we're running from the wildfires or waiting for a prognosis or struggling to make ends meet, when we dare to trust that God will care for us. Sometimes we can see that care most clearly when things are at their worst. So wherever you find yourself this summer, whether you're lucky enough to be able to take a break from your responsibilities, or whether you are surrounded by the stress and fear of uncertainty, know that you are standing on holy ground, the ground of your ancestors, the holy place where God has whispered his name throughout the generations to all who have been forced or allowed to sit with their own fears and anxiety. The name of the God, I am, along with the promise of God, I am. Amen.